morning, my dear art lovers and friends. In regards to the mysterious NFT art market, I'm very happy to present you today my conversation with Sixtine Crutchfield. She's art director of the NFT WISe.art platform. Sixtine holds various degrees from universities around the globe and has a lot experience when it comes to art NFTs and their trade. She explains us why we don't need to be afraid of buying digital art or NFTs and why it is a good thing to approach this kind of art. She also lets us know about the nature of digital currencies. How is the art scene ticking? Everything we always wanted to know about art. This is the podcast of Petra Lossen. Hello, Sixtine Crutchfield.
Hello, Petra Lossen. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. It's a bit a hard time with the corona, or is it the flu? I don't know. But, well, so be it. I'm very happy, Sixtine, that you join us in our art podcast.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. You are a Swiss native coming from Basel, and you studied history of art and theatre at the University of Denver. How did you get to Denver from Switzerland?
That's a good question, and it's not very academic, I'm afraid. Being from Switzerland, I'm a relatively keen and enthusiastic skier, so I was offered a place or a trial on the women's ski team of the University of Denver, and succeeded. So there you go.
Ah, that's quite interesting. That's right. Every Swiss person, I think they were born with this ski on the feet.
Yes, I think so. It's more often than not that we start skiing by the age of 3 and then never stop.
Yeah. I was born close to Cologne, so we are definitely not. I'm just with the après-ski, and that's fine for me.
Yeah, you can also get a tennis elbow with too much at the bar after skiing.
That's right, yes. You hold a master's in business law from the University of Sydney in Australia. So how did you get there?
Another good question. So it's a long way from the Rockies to the Blue Mountains in Australia.
Yeah.
But after my bachelor's degree, I was offered a job in Geneva with Galerie Jan Kruger, which is well, it doesn't exist anymore, but it was one of the top 10 galleries worldwide. And with that job, I got to travel for an Picasso exhibition to Sydney in Australia. And then I fell in love there. So I started to go for a year and I ended up staying 11 years. Because we were all still young and everything, I got the opportunity to do a master's in business law because my employer started a new venture and wanted me on the board. And in Australia, you need to be accredited by a university to sit on an Australian board as a member. So that's what.
Oh yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, you can't just have a friend on the board. It needs to be somebody who's officially accredited as either legal or whatever, specialty you're in. So I did corporate law with the University of Sydney in order to be able to sit on the board.
And you worked as an office and project manager for the Australian Council, the Ministry of Culture. But that's a different job, right? Was it after you?
No, that was before I got to Melbourne and Sydney. I was stationed, the Australian terms here, stationed up in Darwin, because my then husband was working in the Northern Territory with the mining company. And in Darwin, there's a lot of Aboriginal Indigenous culture. And so I worked for the Australia Council up there, and I was absolutely fascinated. It was a great time for me. We stayed up there for over 2 years. And as a project manager, you sort of, you really get seeped into the culture and you talk with the elders and you're really part of a community. And it was coming from Europe. It was such an experience. It was an eye-opener. Very, very enjoyable.
With the indigenous art, have you met these people still living in the wild?
Yes, I have. I went goanna hunting and I ate witchetty grubs and and we cooked on the fire with going kangaroo hunting. And yeah, that's why it was such a culture shock for me.
Wow.
But at the end of the day, the Aboriginal people up in the north, they're very practical people. And, of course, over 200 years of colonization, there are schools now, there are communities that are alcohol free. A lot has been done. And of course, there's many, many Aboriginal people who now live in cities and go to university and are lawyers and representatives of the government. And so it's changing. But when I was there, late 80s, early 90s, it was wild in a way, but it wasn't completely wild either. I mean, they all drive cars, and they all have phones.
When I was younger, I think it was 20, maybe no more. It was 30 years ago. I read a book about the Aborigines, and there was a lady from the West. Let's say from the West. She stayed for a while in the wild with the Aborigines, and she saw that they were able to communicate in a very long distance, of course, without a mobile phone. Have you heard of this?
Yes, of course I have. The country Aboriginal law is a very much a land law. They work with the elements, so earth, wind, and fire, etc. And they have what they call song lines. And there's a very good book by Bruce Chatwin, which is called Song Lines. And these song lines are actually almost genealogy rules. Like they tell an Aboriginal person which clan they're from or which area they're from in the country, and which other area they're linked to through ancestry, etc., which goes way, straight up to the creation of the world, if you like.
Yeah.
The common deity is the rainbow serpent, and then after that you descend from either a water element or a fire element or an air element, etc. And then depending on your descent, whether it's animal or not or vegetal, you have an understanding with the people of the same group, if you like. And yes, they can, if somebody dies 3,000 kilometers away, they will know about it, they will feel it, and they will start going walk about, and they'll go to the funeral, and they'll go and do all the rites that they have to do, walking, going across country. And yes, I have experienced that. It's amazing.
Yes, absolutely. And I also read that if they break a bone, they can fix it within minutes, and then they can walk. I don't remember what they do. Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. Yeah.
I've not heard about that, but they have a lot of remedies which again come from nature. And I have an experience where I was badly cut on my forearm with, I would have needed stitches. And this Aboriginal lady took some green ants. Now, green ants are typical of the whole of the north of Australia, and they're ants that are about at least a centimeter big. I mean, they're big green ants, and they've got a big backside, and they've got very big mandibles, like big teeth in front. And they're also, they eat meat, those ants. So what she does is she holds the skin together, puts an ant is attracted by the smell of my skin, clamps her mandibles shut, and then she breaks off the backside of the ant. And so it's like I've got a little bit of the head and the top of the body hanging there. And she does that with a whole lot of them close all along the wound. And it's true that within a day and a half, I had, the skin was healed, and I have no scar.
Wow.
And it was a big, big gush. I mean, if I'd been in a hospital, I would have had stitches.
That's so amazing. Wow. How long did you stay in Australia? How many years?
Altogether 11, but 2 years up in the Northern Territory. And then my husband and I moved to Melbourne.
Yeah, and after those years, you came back finally to Switzerland. But you didn't go to Basel, but you went to Geneva.
Yes.
So have you been homesick after this experience? I cannot believe it.
I don't think I was ever homesick because, as I said, Australia is so different. Even when you go back to what they call urban civilization, Melbourne is a fantastic town. I mean, you get everything in Melbourne. You get, all the different foods of the world. It's considered the best foodie capital. But the reason I went to Geneva is because actually I was born in Basel, but then I grew up. My parents very quickly moved to Geneva. So I grew up, I can say I'm from Geneva, even if I'm Basel born. So yeah, I just returned home. Again, the culture shock the other way. But I have to say that Switzerland is so settled and doesn't change much that when I got back, I met all my friends again who had all married one, each other, and all the restaurants were the same. Nothing had changed. So I fit right back in,
Yeah.
which was amazing.
You wrote a new innovative MBA course in art management for the Geneva Business School. What was this about?
Okay, so I need to turn the clock back a little bit. When I came back to Geneva, the gallery that I had started working with, which originally sent me to Australia, asked me to come back, but I wanted to do something else. I mean, I'd had a lot of experience. In the meantime, I'd had 2 children. So I didn't want to go back to my first job. So I ended up finding work with a private bank, which also no longer exists. It was a bank called Banque Edouard Constant, which belonged to the Sandoz family. So I'm mentioning that because they're very well versed in art. And Edouard Constant was actually a very famous sculptor in Switzerland. So that bank, there was a lot of synergy. It felt good to work for that bank. I was in the private banking sector directly with clients. So I was front office asset allocation manager. And we very quickly spoke more about art than finance with the clients. And so one other gentleman and myself, we decided to start like an art service or an art advisory service for the very high net worth clients of the bank.
Yeah.
And it worked quite well. And then while I was there, the bank had to train me as a banker because I had no idea. So they sent me to a school called the Geneva Business School, which is specialized in bank training. So that was in, let's say, 1995 or 1997. Then my life went on and everything. And just before COVID in 2019, as an alumni, they contacted me to organize the 25th anniversary of the school. And it was supposed to be a grand affair in a chateau in Bordeaux, with like 3,000 people from all over the world coming in. And I thought that was quite a nice mandate to do. And then COVID happened and the school decided, okay, they're still going to do something. And I suggested we write an MBA for students in the art world, because I believe education is still a huge aspect of any type of industry. And the art world is changing so fast, and it had been buoyant, or it still is buoyant for 2 decades or more. So I thought, as a business school, they should have an art department. And so they agreed to that. And that's what I did. So I set it up. I wrote the program. We then found the professors, in my network. One of the points of the school is that all professors need to be professionally active and need to have been edited in some way, written books, or, worked in a capacity of an expert.
Yeah.
And so I found 7 professors worldwide. It was an online course, so that was, made it easier. And then together with the professors, we devised the content. And the course was actually launched last February 2021. They got their first students. And now it's up and running, and I believe the students are happy.
Yeah.
And my input in that is that I make myself available to visit art fairs and art events with the students, because they're from all over. There's 2 from Canada, 1 from Holland. There's a Russian lady. So they come to Switzerland twice a year, and then we tour Europe. So our next tour will be in June, coming up now.
And the course is in French or in English?
No, it's all in English. It's 3 semesters, which are about 14 weeks long. And actually, it's a good 12 hours of classes over one weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh, cool, yeah.
Once a month. So once a month, they've got one weekend totally dedicated to the course. And then the last semester, they don't have any classes and they have to write a thesis, a case study or something, or a new project or whatever.
Yeah. So, and now you are art director of the NFT WISe.art platform. You got this job recently, right?
That's correct, yeah. With the promotion of the FAME MBA, I ran a series of webinars to sort of, entice people and see a little bit what the subject matter would be. And the first webinar that I ran, they're all on YouTube, by the way, if you type Geneva Business School. But the first webinar I ran was directly after, it was planned like that. It was total coincidence, but directly planned after the big NFT sale by this guy called Beeple that everybody's heard about. which went for $69 million plus commission, which surprised everybody. With all due respect to the artwork, it's actually 5,000 pictures that are of very high quality. So, it's a quality piece that deserves every dollar that was spent for it. But that's an aside. So when I did that, we decided to do something on NFTs. So the first webinar, I had invited a gentleman called Carlos Moreira. And Carlos Moreira is the CEO and founder of a company called WISe.art. And WISe.art is specialized in cybersecurity. Carlos is one of the founding members of the first web, of the WWW, which was invented or discovered in Geneva at CERN. And he was part of that team that was working on that project. And then he took off and did other things. He secured all the information, all the IT for the Vatican, for the United Nations, for governments, etc. So he's flown off his own wings, and I invited him to speak on this webinar. And then he contacted me later and said, he was launching this NFT platform for artworks, and would I be sort of art director, because his idea was that the platform would be at the high end of the market, and that he needed the contacts and the network. And I was delighted to do that, even though I'm not a techie whatsoever. But this whole NFT and blockchain and the cryptocurrency world, I think, is here now to stay. I mean, the cryptocurrencies, also as an ex-work employee of a bank, I was interested, obviously, in the finance side of things. And I think now it's a given, and especially after COVID and the confinement, that we are going to go in that direction of this 3D, metaverse type thing, and that we are going to be buying online more and more, and why not art? And what I find interesting is that digital art has existed ever since IBM invented its first computer in the 50s. And
that's right, yeah.
It was never given the correct attention, because, so it's computer done, and it's, it takes no skills. Well, I'd like to differ on that one. I think it takes a lot of skills, and there's some art out there which is absolutely amazing. And of course, there's the apes and all the crypto punks and mutts and whatever that came from the gaming industry, and that's fine. But there is a lot more intellectual stuff out there, which is of also big interest to me.
Yeah. I would like to know, when you mentioned Mr. Carlos Moreira, and he's coming from the security part of the digital world, and you are also a lawyer. I guess maybe you have heard about this problem we still have with the NFT, which is a non-fungible token. And there's still a security problem. Do you know what I'm talking about? There is still a lack.
Yes.
And could you describe what is the problem here?
Yes, I can try. I think the first issue is, again, lack of education. People just don't know. We've been taken a little bit by surprise because it's happening so fast. And there's, of course, all the geeks, I'd like to call them geeks, they know exactly what we're talking about. And Carlos Moreira is one of them in every good sense of the word. But most of the people don't. And it is scary to buy something that you've not seen, etc., etc. I think the big thing is that, like everything, there's black and white, there's yin and yang, there's good and bad. And with the internet, there's also the dark net. Yeah. And the dark net was created to launder money, to sell drugs, and out of that came a lot of criminality, which is hacking into computer systems. And I think anybody who's a program writer can hack into the system, because, he's at the source of the coding. So there is that. And then, of course, there's the lure of money. So, if you've got these, what I call them gangsters, who hack into government datas and get all these people's information, etc., it's to get ransoms. And that's criminal. And you can't avoid that. Now, on the NFT side of things, with the big marketplaces, and I'll name one because everybody knows it, it's OpenSea. It's the biggest marketplace on the world. Of course, it's brand new, so there's no governance. So people are buying off they're flipping. What we call flipping is like they're buying and they're putting it straight back on the market and trying to make money that way. I think that's a bit like what happened with the gold rush and the Far West. People are excited. They're extremely creative. And those who are IT savvy and the millennials especially who've grown up with computers, they can see it as a game, but they also see that it's very lucrative. And I think right now it's going crazy. But I think at the end of the day, and of course there's copying and there's, people that like OpenSea are losing NFTs sometimes and they're finding them again. Then there's bad bids, which means they've been bought, but the money wasn't there. It was a fake bid. There's all sorts of things. But at the end of the day, if you think about it, it also happens in the real world and in the secondary market of the real world. There's all sorts of intricate ploys to make more money or less money, or to cheat the money out of somebody else. So that's always going to be there. I think the interest in a non-fungible token is the fact that it's forever inscribed. Whatever transaction happens, and whether it's mercantile or whether it's digitizing archives of a museum or, securing some sort of identity provenance of a piece of art, is inscribed on the blockchain. And that's forever, and you can't change it. And I think that's what's very important today. I think the use of NFTs will come later on when things settle a little bit on the marketplace. It's going to be a real tool that we're going to have to use. Most museums we know haven't digitized their works. Most of their works are in archives. People don't see them. And that's a game changer, because now they're going to be doing digital virtual exhibitions with works no one's ever seen that people can see all over the world. They're going to be able to raise funds, without begging. I think that's the way to look at NFTs from here on.
Yeah.
But the marketplace will always be a little bit tricky and a little bit difficult. And as I said, it's the same thing in the real world.
From an art history point of view, what do you think is considered digital art? And when did it become an art movement?
I don't know that it's a movement yet, but that's an interesting question. For me, the first name that pops to mind is Vera Molnar. She was working in the 50s, and she was working for IBM actually, and she always worked already. If you remember the perforated cards that we had to slide in the computer and it would make little holes, she was already creating patterns with the little perforations of the card. And then she worked very much into kinetic and linear and binary, like black, white and lines. And you could, make the computer make those lines and come up with artistic compositions. She's actually doing a big sale. I think Sotheby's is featuring her coming up now. And she's 98 years old. And kudos to her. I'm very happy, because up until people knew about Vera Molnar. She was a famous figure, but she never got the credit she deserves, and she's getting it now, and I think it's wonderful. After that, a lot of things happened, like with kinetic art and with even recently I went to Art Basel in September, and there was an artist who had coded his computer to do what they call generative art, which means every time he sells a piece of art and it comes off his property, if you like, and the computer automatically generates another piece of art according to his criteria. I think that's all. It's interesting. It's a new medium. We went from, in the 18th century and 19th century, people were painting portraits. Then they were going to a studio to take photographs. Then we went from photographs to video, and people were saying this isn't art, and then now it is art. And now everybody's, like if you're buying a video from Pipi Lotterist or something here in Switzerland, it's a work of art. There's no denying it. So, yeah, I think, and then there's television art with pay. I don't know whether, you consider that video art or digital art. But yeah, if you have an internal circuit that's showing images on a screen, to me it's digital, even though it's called TV. So yeah, it's been going on for a while. I think it probably grew a little bit bigger and interesting in the 70s. And then, of course, when people started having PCs at home, because artists and designers and architects, they all started using PCs. It was so much quicker for the renderings and all that. And then, as I said earlier, the creativity is unbelievable. And there's some very, very fine artwork there. Whether it's a movement or just a continuation of since photography, I don't know.
Yeah.
We've gone from silver print to to now digital and photography. Some people are saying, the old photography has so much more depth and richness in the quality of the image rather than photography done with a computer. And then you can see some works by photographers today that are just unbelievable. Again, with that it's so precise. And there's a guy in America who's also, in his, let's say, late 70s, early 80s. His name is Alan Tatel, and he does fantastic work, and it's all digital. And he's a photographer originally. So, yeah, it's just an evolution. I think it's a new tool, and artists are embracing it. It will help their work. I think they're just helping their work going further.
Yeah. Where do you see the gap between when something is really art or when something is a picture of gaming, I say?
Yeah. Well, some gaming is art. I mean, if you look at Assassin's Creed, the backgrounds compared to Pac-Man, which is what I used to play, or even Pong, it's gone a long way as well. But what's art, what's gaming, that's a little bit what's art and what's design. The line is very unclear. I mean, there was a time there where we said design had to have a purpose and art was just, something that you looked at and had no practical sense. I'm not sure that's correct either. I think, to me, art has to have some thought behind it. If an artist has come up with the concept which he intellectually devised and thought about and developed, and he has a message with it at the end, whatever the message, that is art. It's a way of communicating, and it's a way of communicating without words, or even with words. Jenny also uses words, but yeah, I think it's the culmination of a lot of thought.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Joseph Beuys is one of them. And I mean, is it art? I mean, he was performing, he did land art, but at the end of the day, he had something to say. And that's what I think is important with an artist. And when there's nothing to say, I think you can see it immediately. When the message is not, let's say, sophisticated enough, you can see it.
Yeah. And you can feel it. That's right.
Yeah.
So you're working now for WISe.art. That's a new creative platform where NFTs are sold. What is the difference with this platform?
Well, that's a little bit brushing my own ego here, but what I thought we should do from the beginning is to have this NFT platform used a little bit like an art gallery, if you like. It's just a new way of presenting artworks, and on that we need to have a vetting committee. So we have different categories. We've got photography, we've got emerging digital art, we've got vintage, what I call vintage crypto, which means if somebody came up with an interesting collection of lazy apes, for example, again, with some sort of historical background or provenance or whatever, I would take it on. And then we've got photography, collectibles, and we've also got an area for philanthropy. And the idea was that not everyone can come on there. That means everyone can come on there, but we actually allow the works to be approved by the various members of the committee, which I'm heading. And then what it means is that everybody, is registered. We know who the artists are. Most of the time I try and talk to them or engage in some sort of connection outside of the platform. And artists really appreciate that. They know where I'm coming from, and we have this sort of gallerist artist talk, which I think is important. And on the other hand, we've got collectors who we also know who they are. A little bit like as in the secondary market, when you know the buyer and you know the seller. That's what I'm trying to instill here, which is different from the other platforms. And then, of course, very importantly, we've got all that cybersecurity expertise from WISe. So, the registration is done. We ask for people's IDs. It's verified. You get an actual registered, verified identification code as if you're an artist or if you're a collector. So whoever comes on the platform, we can find. Like, it's, we're never going to lose. Hopefully, I'm touching wood as I say this, but we're never going to lose an NFT. We're never going to, have dirty money and that sort of thing. And that's where I think we're different as well. There's a real verification of identities of anyone who comes on the platform.
That's right. I also did it the last weeks, and I was impressed which questions I had to answer. And I really felt secure with this.
That's good. That's nice to hear. I think also being in Switzerland, and everybody knows about the banking, anti-laundering rules, etc., anti-money laundering rules, and it's fine. We're sort of, even though there is no governance yet on the internet, on the digital or the metaverse, we're applying those very same rules. And I'm doing the same when we get traditional art market. We're having a lot of contacts with museums, as I said before, to digitize their work, and they want to create NFTs as well. Well, even though I'm no art expert, as in, if somebody comes up with the Leonardo da Vinci, I'm not able to officially say this is Leonardo da Vinci. But
who can?
Yeah, exactly. But we do that work of, we will check the provenance, we will check the history, the bibliography, the exhibition of the piece. I mean, we do a real thorough work before we create an NFT for such a painting. And that's also of interest. And to this date, I haven't heard of any other platform who will be doing that.
Sixtine, don't you think all this is blatant speculation?
Yes, of course. And I think, again, it's the gold rush, and so be it. And I think those who invested in cryptocurrencies 10 years ago, well done. They have all my respect. I didn't dare do it, and I regret it now. Of course, a lot of people lost their money too. You only always hear about the success cases. But I think with COVID, it all got accelerated because we realized that there was a lot more people that were crypto savvy and crypto wealthy, and they had nowhere to spend it because nobody was actually using it. So with the art and the artists embracing the technology, it sort of really took off quickly in the art world. But the music world, the fashion world, they woke up pretty quickly as well. I think also the sports world, there's some very good platforms from the NBA, from Formula One, etc., who are using NFTs now to raise funds. And also to give, I think what's important is to give the buyer of these NFTs a sort of sense of ego and a sense of being unique. Somebody who gets a VIP NFT to the NBA league or to the Formula One booth. We had that in the physical world as well. But now this thing, as I said before, it's forever and it's unchangeable. So that, I think the whole world's going to change. And yes, it is speculation. Of course, human beings are human beings and they want to make money fast, and the faster the better. But again, there's a lot more behind it that this technology will bring right round, like in medicine and probably even in the climate warming. I mean, the technology which is being developed now is unbelievable. Beyond, as I said, I'm not a techie, but I mean, I see a lot of articles about, people who are working with alternative energies, etc. And now we can, with an NFT, you can create an NFT on a Pico satellite. For example, WISe, they have a department called WISe.art, and they've got some 80 satellites going around in space. And they can now track container ships, lost containers that are floating in the oceans, things like that. So again, yes, it's a lot of money involved, but I think it's also an effort to try and solve some of the issues that we have.
And the people who just start with the NFT world, they are confronted with different cryptocurrencies. Why are there different currencies? And is this like the currency we know, which is the money we have in our hands?
Not quite. I won't go into all the technical details, but what they call fiat money, which is real money, is based on the old precept of gold. There's a value behind it, which is, the whole finance world is based on that. With the cryptos, there's different ways. There's it's driven by the popularity, or if you like, the volume of how many people are trading on it, which makes the value. That's one way. The most famous one is Ethereum, which was one of the first ones, with Bitcoin, of course. And it depends which platforms you're using. So the Ether is used on Ethereum. And then there's several exchanges, and that's just like any currency. You can exchange and you can, buy with your Bitcoins, you can buy Ethereum or Polygon or Solana or Casper, for example. Our platform works with Casper. Casper Lab is another type of exchange. So, yeah, I suppose there's people who trade in currencies and try and guess the volatility and of the different currencies. I think also there's a big issue with the carbon imprint on the world now. So some platforms and some currencies are working very hard on being greener, etc., using less energy to store it because you have to mint it and there's gas fees, etc., and all that takes up a lot of energies, all this volume. Of course, the higher the volume of a currency, the higher the value, but also the higher the energy that is being used. So a lot of these scientists are trying to alleviate that and to sort of average it out so that the value does not mean too much energy, etc. And they're all working, but it's changing. It's changing every day. There's new inventions going on every day. And as I said, I'm totally neophyte in that, so I don't really know how to describe it, but it's there is trading going on and there will be speculation on the currencies as well. And I said those people who did it 10 years ago were right to do it.
Sixtine, how has the NFT market evolved in 2021 and where are we going?
Well, it exponentially grew out of proportion. Again, I think because, during confinement, people were bored, artists were extremely creative, and collectors will be collectors and they need to collect. I mean, it's like a fever. So all of a sudden, the museums, the fairs, the galleries, everything was closed. So everybody had time to turn on to the internet. So the NFTs really rooted themselves in the collector's world, if you like, during COVID, I think. And now it's too big to fail or too big to go away. That's quite for sure. And we're moving from 2D to 3D very quickly. So you'll soon have galleries. You'll be able to visit, have your avatar, which is your little embodiment in a cartoon type figure, visit Gagosian in New York, or go and see the next exhibition in Japan or whatever it is. So I think that will soon happen, and very naturally. I mean, the same that we, like before COVID, I would not shop for clothes or food on the internet because I said, I need to see the fruit, I need to try on the clothes. Well, that's no longer true. I now shop on the internet and order my food. And so I think it's going to happen very organically. I mean, we're there.
Yeah.
Who would have thought 20 years ago that we'd be doing our banking over the phone and that we'd be sending money left, right, and center with our phone? So it's nothing to be frightened of. Of course, you need to take your precautions, as in security and all that. But, and I think a lot of people will have to learn about that. I think with social media, we soon don't post your photographs everywhere, that sort of thing. But that's an education and people will get used to it.
Yeah. And what art types have exploded? Is this trend long-term? Will it evolve and how?
Yeah, I think it's long-term and it will evolve. I think it's already evolved from just being basic JPEGs of photographs of something to actual artwork on the computer, to already now animation and animated and GIFs and all that. You can see it on the various platforms. And again, with social media, I mean, it used to be Facebook, then it became Instagram, and now it's TikTok. So, I mean, we're moving along. And also, I think the value of the content is also improving all the time. As I said, we went from, very intellectual work from Vera Molnar, which is now on the internet as well and going into NFTs. But then we went through the gaming type of design and the cartoons. I respect everything. Like there's some servers, like there's Marvel cartoons that are coming up with NFTs. Well, who doesn't want to have a superhero if it's the original collectible that was designed, in the 50s? I think that's all got value. And then you've got the emerging artists or the artists that are just playing around with their computers and coming up with, it's not just playing, it's literally working and coming up with animated things, with things you can project on complete buildings, like, this mapping onto entire dunes in the desert or ski slopes or whatever. All that is part of it. And I think it was there in the artists' minds, and now it's doable, and it's doable a lot easier and a lot faster. So it's great.
And how about the metaverse? And could you explain what metaverse is?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. It's a parallel world, which you need a screen to see. And at the moment you also need goggles, but that will probably improve as well. And it gives you sensations. Again, like 10 years ago or even 15 years ago, IMAX came out, the cinema world came out with, 180 degrees, and then it was sensor round, and then your seat was rattling, and then the noise and the smell was coming out in your movie houses. That's all a continuation of that. It's all about involving the viewer and giving them an emotion, whether it's fright, whether it's awe, whether it's, well-being, like you can put yourself in a place with essential oils and sea music, or the breathing of a whale or whatever. It's all part of that. It's immersion into another surrounding. And now we can do it in what they call the metaverse. And what I think is exciting is that young people can have their avatar. You can go to a concert. Well, ABBA was one of the ones that was doing it with holograms, bringing you back to the ABBA of the old days and the ABBA today with the music they write today, etc. But you can go into that concert on your screen, and you can be standing next to someone who's on their screen in Shanghai, and you can actually converse. And I think that's exciting.
Yes.
It's like we come back to the indigenous with telepathy, except that we're using technology to replace inner telepathy. But it's sort of the same, need for connecting and connecting with people that you wouldn't normally in the real world if you're stuck in Geneva or in Cologne. There's little chance that you'll actually connect with someone in Japan just for a concert.
Yeah.
And the gaming industry is doing that too. I mean, I have two sons, and one of them is big on all those video games. And he plays with people in Russia, and he plays with people in South America, and they talk over their headsets. And I think it's wonderful. And with that, I've got a little story. There's a game which is called Axie Infinity, and I happen to know one of the founders. And Axie Infinity pays, like they do teams, and they pay the teams to play.
Yeah.
And so in countries like the Philippines, it's very popular because you make quite a bit of money. Of course, if the electricity fails, well, there's no more gaming because nothing happens. And so not long ago, they had a typhoon. And Max was explaining to me here in Geneva that his the team members from the Philippines contacted him in Switzerland and said, could they have the contact numbers, names and numbers of the other players, so that they could help each other because of the typhoon. A lot of people had lost their homes and were out of water, etc., etc. So there was this solidarity which came about through team players that had never seen each other because they were only playing on the screens. But when, the emergency happened, they wanted to help. And I thought that was a really nice story.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. What do you think, who will benefit most from this world?
I think the collectors who started early, like those who were already buying. I've met some people from the States and also in the Arab countries. They've already got, over 1,000 NFTs. I think those guys being the first ones, the pioneers, if you like, they will probably end up being the most savvy and the quickest to make money again, or already have. There's people in the States, for example, Kenny Schachter. He's an artist, he's a journalist, he's an art critic, he's a professor at NYU, and he's very, very active on the social networks. He's probably making a mint, and good for him. I'm really happy for him. Then I think at the end of the day, those who will benefit again will be the institutions, the museums, the artists themselves. I think one of the new things which we haven't talked about is with this NFT world is that on the secondary market, the artists keep getting their royalties. There are certain terms and conditions which are inscribed in an algorithm which they call a smart contract, which is embedded in this blockchain, and that goes forever. So if you're an artist and you sell your work today in a gallery and a buyer comes along, okay, you get your commission. If that buyer sells the work again, even if it's on Sotheby's and it makes $1 million, the artist doesn't see anything from that $1 million.
Yeah, that's right.
Whereas now, with the NFTs, every time there's a transaction which happens on that NFT, the artist will still get their royalty.
Yeah.
And and the percentage can be variable. So I think that's a huge new thing. And I think that goes for the music industry as well. So that's very important. And that's probably the biggest innovation in all this new thing.
Yeah, I agree. And what do you think can we expect in the future?
Well, I'm hoping that it will keep going to the future generations. The way to look at art will definitely change. I think it's not going to take away from the traditional art. I mean, we've all seen how nice it was to be back in Basel and to be back in an art fair and to be back in a concert hall and etc. with people. I've been on a lot of panels as well, and it's just so nice to sit in front of a live audience. So I think, there's going to be parallel worlds. But what I think is interesting as well is that people will have screens. The screens have gotten bigger and bigger all the time. So probably, in one day we will have a whole window will be this, the screen. And what one guy said, he was based in Miami but travels around, he says, when I go to ski in my lodge in Aspen or whatever, I can see my artwork still. I don't need to ship it. I don't need to insure it, etc., etc. I just take my phone or my laptop or my computer and go in, and project it on my screens in Aspen. And then when I fly to Europe and Paris and I'm homesick, I can look at my NFTs in my hotel room. I think that's important. I think the way we look at art and our collections, even if it's stuck away in some vault in a free port or whatever, the real thing now with the NFTs, you can see your art, whether it's digital art or not, you can see it anywhere. And I think that's big. And I think that's the way we will go in the future, and millennials will embrace that. So what I find interesting is I heard an interview of this guy in Dubai who has something like over 400 NFTs already. He actually said, I'm buying for my grandchildren. I want my grandchildren to say in 25 years, my grandfather was the first one to have an NFT collection and it's ours now. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's where I see it going. And again, it's inscribed forever on the blockchain. So, unless we all run out of electricity, which I don't think is going to happen, we'll always be able to see our artwork.
Thank you so much, Sixtine. It was more than interesting to get to know all these details. I hope we can meet up in the near future. I wish you all the best. Greetings to Geneva.
Thank you very much, Petra. It has been a pleasure talking with you. I do also hope that we see each other physically one day because, as I said, it's parallel, but it goes hand in hand. And, anyone who's in doubt, I strongly encourage to read. There's so much information out there that it's easy to be informed. And I would certainly say do not be afraid of cryptocurrency and of the NFT world and the digital. It's not bad. It's a good thing.
Thank you. And I think in the same way. How is the art scene ticking? Everything we always wanted to know about art. This is the podcast of Petra Lossen.